Hi guys, welcome to this series called All About Interviews. In today's session, I'm going to talk about the kinds of candidates that B school interviews typically end up seeing, and this is going to be a very exciting, interesting session because here's where I give you the other side's perspective. People sitting on the other side of the interview panel look at you differently, and it's always good to have that perspective in mind. My name is Anand Venkatesan. I'm an educator with Unacademy. I've trained students for almost a decade and more for CAT and all management exams. And I've scored 99% percentile in successive years in the past, and I've trained students through the PIVAT and interview stages, for almost a decade now. Before I go into today's session, a quick sort of word of advice. Do follow us on social media. Our YouTube channel is the one that you're probably seeing this video in, CAT4MBA, but that same handle also applies to Telegram. That's where you'll get the latest information about the kind of courses, the new sessions, live sessions that are happening both on YouTube as well as in the form of free classes, special classes on the Unacademy app. So do follow us and get all the recent updates from us. Right, so today, like this entire series is about, I'm going to talk about admission interviews. Something that we did talk about in the previous session too was the fact that, B school admission interviews are intense, right? They're very intense because now that you're pitted up against simply the best of candidates, right? The competition is severe. Every person to your left, to your right, in front of you, behind you is somebody who's a school topper, who's done well at college, who's done interesting internships, has done societal work or led teams in multiple initiatives, right? So the competition is fierce, and so obviously it's going to be a nervous time for you. There is the big fear of failure. Remember that statistic I gave you last time: 1 in 10 candidates get through a B school interview, which means 9 fail. And you look all around you, and most candidates will fear looking at competition that, hey, do I really stand a chance, right? Because if my impression of the other candidates is that they are superior, it will play out the same way in the interview. And I think if you're not burdened by these fear of expectations and the fear of your competing rivals, then I think you should be motivated at least by the quest for impact and the quest for perfection, because in an interview, end of the day is nothing other than a simple platform where you showcase the best about yourself, and if you keep in mind above all the fact that you need to create an impact, that really gives you a strong direction in which the interview should head, right? I think it's an Arya Par situation. You should definitely look at it more as a positive reinforcement, saying yes, the competition is severe, but I can surely find tidbits about me, specific areas, specific experiences and life events that would really stand out and make me create that kind of an impact on the panel. Remember, it's a subjective interview, right? So while your attitude needs to be Arya Par, needs to be, I need to be prepared, but I need to also have that confidence going into an interview. But ये सब तो सही है, but in preparing, we rarely sort of recognize what the other person perceives us as, and that's what I thought we would talk about today. I've been part of many interview panels, both when hiring people for jobs, as well as helping students and candidates ace their interviews at both undergraduate and graduate levels, right? And so today's session, I thought I'll talk to you about the 5 typical candidate types that any interview panel, any interviewer typically faces, right? And the first one is the most obvious one. Well, we've been talking about the burden of expectation. So, almost half the candidates you'll see in an interview, at least on the very first day of your interview, you're going to be a nervous wreck. You're going to be somebody who's biting nails. You can see the image does proper justice to what you're going to look like. There's going to be a frown to your face. You're going to be sweating like anything. You're going to look uncomfortable. Your eyes will betray your fear, and essentially your entire body language will only speak one thing to the interviewer, which is the lack of self-confidence. Do I really deserve to be here? I probably don't. I don't think I belong here. Take me away. And as much as it's natural to be nervous, I think it's equally natural to imagine that somebody who looks at you in the state will definitely not select you, right? So, sure, it's one. I mean, I can empathize with such candidates, but I definitely won't go that extra mile and select them. So if you're somebody who's likely to get nervous, I think you need to find your way out. You need to find a way of building a little bit of self confidence. Speak to a mentor. I'm sure they can help identify areas within your profile, things that you've done, your experiences that should give you a degree of confidence. But remember that you don't need to prove that you're better than the others. You just need to prove that you deserve to be here, right? And like I said, it's a selection round, not a rejection round. Okay, here's my favorite other candidate, which is, I mean, most people don't even know that they are the Viva candidate, right? And I'm sure I use this word specifically to evoke memories of the year, of our past gone by. At school, many a time when you're dealing with, science and laboratories, there is a, evaluation called the Viva. And what happens in a Viva is typically that you're made to stand or sit in front of a faculty member, and there is a series of questions that are posed to you, and you need to give oral responses to all those questions. Usually these questions are a mix of theory and practical applications of whatever experiments, whatever theory you've experimented with. Well, I find it fascinating that this is the kind of behavior that some candidates exhibit even in a B school interview. Here's where you're supposed to show energy, drive, enthusiasm, and to my utter astonishment, here's a candidate sitting in front of me who seems to be laid back, who's not really volunteering any extra information about himself, but is waiting for a question to be asked. And when a question is indeed posed to such candidates, बिल्कुल elaboration नहीं करते हैं, बिल्कुल अपना आंसर prepared है. एक particular question अगर पूछा गया है, what was your biggest achievement to date? My biggest achievement to date was to be nominated for head boy in school, and that's it. Right? Now imagine what I as an interviewer will think, okay, do you really want to tell me more about this experience? Do you really want to make a good impression on me? Or do you believe you've already been selected and this is just a formality, right? And I say Viva for that reason too, because most of the time when we took Viva, it used to be more of a formality. We knew that more marks are going to be awarded for the experiment and the theory exam that we would write. So the Viva that was literally worth only 5 marks is not important, and that seems to be the attitude that a lot of candidates carry into an interview, thinking I've already cleared the CAT and I've already been working, so why do I need to impress this guy? And you couldn't be further from the truth, my friend. And interviews, the marks that you score, your performance in an interview is going to be pivotal to get selected. Don't let you have any differing opinions on this. Fight your way out of this battle, my friend. And above all, don't have this attitude of I will answer only if you ask for it. I will only volunteer information when and if you ask for it. No, that's absolutely the wrong lopsided approach to take. If anything, you need to know exactly what you want to do in an interview. You want to be sure about what is it that you want to communicate in an interview, and be ready to communicate even if that is not indeed asked, right? So the fact that I topped a national level entrance exam, or I was placed amongst a very, very elite set of students across the country, is something that I should volunteer irrespective of whether the interviewer asks me the same or not. So you need to be that you need to have a little bit of a proactive attitude, and you should have pre-identified things that you need to volunteer. Okay, here's another candidate type which is very, very common in life, I should think. So it's not a big surprise that these candidates also abound in interviews. I like to call them as the chameleon, because here's a person who does have the street smarts, but probably overindulges in that, right? To the extent that he or she is probably paying a great amount of attention to your gestures and your attitude in an interview, right? And so the moment they sort of get judged that you don't like an answer, they will change their stance, they will change their position, and well, that's why they're called the chameleon, because they can change color at will. But is that a good thing in a B school interview? Well, actually, no, because in a B school interview, typically the panelist, which probably consists of an alumnus and or a faculty member, I think being a principled person, being critically self-aware, but also being, honest to a fault, is something that is really, really looked at favorably. So, if I perceive that here somebody who's being a little dishonest with me, is seemingly shifting his stance on the basis of my reaction, means that he's somebody who's just trying to please me, but probably does not have as much of a metal within him, right? And this is the kind of chameleon. I am what you need to be, and I'm not really telling you what I actually am. Well, is not somebody that I would prefer. So in a B school interview, you always need to project this honest attitude of, I play my good and my bad on my as a badge of honor, and I'm not going to change my stance, right? I don't. By the way, some people misread this observation and say that, okay, I need to always hold on to my stance. I should never hold on. Should never make a change, right? No, that's not true. I think you need to believe your stance, right? But if given a logical reason to change your opinion, you must allow for that change to happen as well, right? So I think it's like a fine balance between being opinionated but still not being resistant to change, and that's the balance that you need to strike. This is another interview candidate type, which is also very, very common. Somebody who walks into an interview thinking the world of himself, right? And I call these people car salesmen, because they have this innate ability of projecting something as way more magnanimous and grandiloquent as compared to what they really are. And well, I should be honest at this point and say that, well, B schools, in the interview panel at that, usually are very, very, prepared for exaggeration, right? They in fact anticipate that candidates will exaggerate their achievements. They will sort of overstate their, qualifications and overstate their strengths. And that is something that they account for. But what I think is not acceptable is to really exaggerate to the point of it being unbelievable, right? And this is something that usually occurs when you're fresh out of college, right? And I guess it has to do partly with the lack of maturity, because what you don't realize is that the person sitting in front of you probably also went through the same journey. So when you try to present to him a very, very lofty picture of what your college symposium or your college annual fest was like, the kind of footfalls, the kind of monies that were involved, the kind of work that you did therein, it's always a good idea to sort of inflate, but never to over exaggerate. And that's I think the fine line again that you need to find between just being plain and modest versus being a little grandiose in terms of presenting yourself, but stop yourself from just going overboard and misrepresenting yourself. Yeah. So do remember, over projection is a real thing. Please avoid that at all times, right? Like I said, honesty is the best medicine, and I think you should try to imbibe that within yourself. Well, most of the kinds of interviews I've been talking about have been far from perfect. We've talked about people being nervous wrecks. We've talked about people being chameleon-like. We've talked about people being just close bracketed, saying I'll only answer back and I'll not show any enthusiasm. Or we've discussed the over projector, somebody who's overconfident to the point of, in fact, and I probably should have mentioned it then, but people who are overconfident in interviews also tend to cut the interviewer short, right? Imagine if I were to ask you a question and without letting me finish, if you start answering, you're somebody who's to be avoided at all costs, right? So if you're somebody who jumps the gun and lacks the ability to listen before you answer, then unfortunately that's not going to be a favorable trait to carry in an interview, right? But all of this were probably warning signals for what I should not be or what I should try avoiding being like. But so what is the ideal candidate then? Well, I like to call the ideal candidate an enthu cutlet, right? An enthu cutlet, because just like a cutlet, and I'm sure all of you love the the cutlet as much as I do. It's an amalgamation of various ingredients, isn't it? A cutlet, you look at the cutlet and it's a fried item and it has ingredients which you can't fathom from the outside, but you're still sure that what it is made of is something definitely that you will like, right? But the fact that an enthu, I'm calling him an enthu cutlet, is also something that is evident from a behavioral aspect as it is from an attitudinal aspect. So what I mean by that is that think about body language and posture, right? Somebody who's enthusiastic, who's energetic and vibrant in an interview is going to sit in an interview and look very, very intense and very, very interested and there and present, right? There's no slouching of shoulders, there's no being casual, there's no being laid back. Entire attitude is one of being in the moment and being right there and trying to create that big impact. And just the fact that you're willing to go that next step and you're projecting this personality to me tells me that you want this B school seat, you want to nail this interview badly. So that's a very, very positive signal to send. Number two, there's also a behavioral aspect to this, because I guess in an interview there are many situations which you might expect and some others which you might be wary of, and then some others which you downright do not expect. And so sometimes your facial expressions and the manner in which you speak can sort of give away your enthusiasm quotient, say, right? So if we're talking about sport, I suddenly notice that you're full of energy, but when I present a case to you and ask you to analyze it, and I can see that your decibel level has sort of flattened out, and that's again something to watch out for. But the enthu cutlet, on the other hand, is going to be jumping at joy, because he or she loves the chance, the opportunity to put their best foot forward, even if it is something that they did not anticipate. They don't hesitate, they carry the load on their shoulders and run towards their target. And that's the attitude that you want to project. Somebody who gets things done, somebody who enjoys challenges, somebody who enjoys put in the spot and maintains a smile all through this ordeal, right? And that's the ideal candidate, if you ask me. I simply love what I do. I loved what I'm doing back then. I love what I'm doing right now, and I for sure love what I'm going to do at your B school, right? So think about it. I think I'm leaving you with some points to ponder. I think by subtly discussing the kind of candidates and the kind of attributes that candidates bring to the table, I am sort of trying to at least force you to think about what is it that you stand for, what is your personality going to stand for, and how do you want to present yourself to the interviewer, right? Think about it and keep learning with Unacademy. There are plenty of advantages of joining Unacademy and getting a Plus subscription. There's these advantages start from the very basic. You can learn from home, you can prepare for the written entrance test, you can climb up the leaderboard, but you can also tackle interviews and group discussions, right? And you don't necessarily need to pay up. The Plus subscriptions are paid subscriptions. You don't need to necessarily pay. At the start, you can probably experience the Unacademy app for free in the form of special classes. And if you like if you like what you see, then maybe you could register into one of the plans. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe this video. My name and don't forget to also follow me on Telegram and my channel Anand for Quant, where I give you updates on all my courses. Thank you. You have a great day. Bye bye.